now we're going to bring in someone that I had mentioned to you before, does a great job breaking down boxing, none other than boxing analyst Richard Q. Quinones. What's going on, Q?
Rick, always a pleasure, my friend. How are things?
Pretty good. Another busy hustle and bustle day. Just to let everyone know out there that coming up this weekend, we're going to have an opportunity, Q and myself, to do something that he does all the time. And I'm going to pick his brains, and hopefully he doesn't lead me astray. But Q's actually going to be coming down here to Northern Virginia, D.C. area, and we're going to be covering the Tori Nelson fight, championship fight against Mia St. John, and I'm looking forward to doing this. It'll be my first boxing broadcast, so my friend, you're going to have to make sure that I don't look too bad.
No, first of all, that would never happen, and yeah, it is. I'll tell you, it's going to be a great weekend down your way, Saturday the 17th at the Northern. You know, a lot of people don't know this, but Tori Nelson, real great fighter. I mean, a lot's on the line here for this young lady. She's a 2013 Beltweight boxing co-boxer of the year, and that was courtesy of a big win over Kaylee Reese. You know, she's made a couple title defenses. This is for the WIBA, which is the Women's International Boxing Association welterweight championship. So she's really going to try to defend that title against Mia St. John. And St. John, a lot of time inside the ring, well-traveled veteran, like Nelson's, won numerous world titles. So I think it's going to be a very interesting fight. I know a lot of people believe that Mia is more of a person who is, I guess, style over than substance, whereas Nelson's the antithesis, the opposite of that. But, like, the bottom line is that's going to be a heck of a card down there in your backyard. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. I really am. We're going to be broadcasting that here at Sports Journey, so we're excited about that. And again, we're going to be picking Q's brain. I mean, this is what he does, you know, for the likes of Comcast and several other boxing outlets out there. So exciting time for us. And since we're talking about boxing, and I know, you know, this guy's very versed, folks, so I'm going to get his thoughts on several subjects today. But the first thing, we'll start off with his craft, which is boxing. And we just saw, you know, 2 weeks ago, we saw Floyd Mayweather have perhaps, you know, his toughest fight, if you want to call it that. I kind of beg to differ and think that we saw Floyd Mayweather want to, you know, give the fans what they wanted, and they wanted to see him get into a slugfest with a hard puncher. And that he did do. I still think he won the fight convincingly, in my opinion. But is this a fight that maybe the blueprint was laid out on how you get an aging Floyd Mayweather at this point?
I certainly think it was to some extent. I mean, Marcos Maidano is no pushover. I actually scored the fight 116-112. I could have went 115-113, really, for the novice listeners out there, 7 rounds to 5. But the bottom line is he did some things that we haven't seen an opponent do against Floyd Mayweather. And look, I think this was Mayweather's toughest bout since his win over Castillo in their first meeting back in 2002. And I'll tell you why, because we knew Maidano was going to be a volume puncher, and he was going to be relentless like he was against Broner Lake, and he didn't have any respect for Mayweather. And you know what? Good for him. The problem was awkward punches, various angles and different force, and we saw that right hand that was coming straight over the top, uppercuts down under. They gave Mayweather some trouble. The problem is that Marcos landed 221 punches, I believe, the most against Floyd in 40 fights. Now, if you look at the punch count, he landed 26%. Mayweather lands 54%. And I know people are like, well, what's the difference? He was active. No. It's really kind of a sign, so to speak, because obviously they're looking at the quality of punches, if you're landing these punches. And quite frankly, that fight was really 2 halves.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, that was basically the first half. I thought Maidana did what he needed to do. Second half, Mayweather made adjustments like great fighters do after the 6th round. It was a different fight. The problem is that he was just not scoring, touching up, landing those blows, landing those jabs, those rights as effectively as Floyd was later on in the bout. And again, you mentioned you think Floyd was put on a show. I wholeheartedly disagree. I think that's a crock of BS, to be quite honest with you. I think the bottom line is that, you know, Floyd underestimated what Marcos Maidana and Robert Guerrero put together, and that's where I certainly think there's going to be opportunity for a rematch. And it was a very good fight. Look, not a highway robbery, maybe a little back alley pickpocketing here and there with some of the scoring, but quite frankly, 115, 113, 116, 112, it's fair, and Floyd got tested, and like all great champions do, his character continued to be revealed in the ring, and he did what he needed to do to win, and that's, it's a testament, too, because for Marcus Maidana, I think he outpunched himself at times and smothered his punches and just maybe gassed himself a little bit late in the fight, and then Floyd stepped up and, and then off we go.
Well, I do think that a lot of fans out there, Q, have to be understanding, and they have to understand, as you said, yes, he came in as a volume puncher. A lot of those punches didn't land. Some of them did. Don't get me wrong. Probably more punches we've ever seen Floyd take. But a lot of those punches didn't land. It was just the amount that were thrown.
Right.
I think if you look at the ConcuBox, numbers, Mayweather landed more than, literally more than Maidana did. So to me, when you go back and look at this fight, 2-3 times, which I did, I still think Floyd won the fight. Maybe there is some truth to what you're saying as far as Floyd, saying that he wanted to give the fans, their fight. But I do think that if they were to fight again and Floyd were to fight a typical Floyd fight, I don't know if Marcus Maidana would be as effective as he was in this fight. I just don't know if that would happen.
You go back to the stats. 221 out of 858 for Maidana, which is 26%. 230 out of 426, which is 54% for Mayweather. So yes, those numbers do not lie. I just think, to say you were dancing around entertaining the fans against a 12-1 underdog, I'm not going to buy that. He's got to give credit to his opponent in that regard. But that being said, if there is a rematch, I thought Marcus Maidana needed to finish the round, needed to work the body, get Floyd up against the ropes. When I say finish the rounds out there for people, meaning not that 10-second flurry. I'm talking about the last 30. Be aggressive, because Floyd Mayweather is a guy that wins majority of his bouts via points. He's really not going to knock anyone out, right?
Right.
We don't really see that a lot. So he does what he needs to do. People look at him as avoiding to engage his opposition. No, smart boxers move around and they fight as if they're winning the fight. So if there was a rematch, which I'm hoping there is, and I'm sure we'll get to that in a moment, I definitely think that there's some things that Mayweather takes away that Maidana takes away. And one thing that Maidana takes away is, well, I have to be prepared to really go through hell with this guy, because I need to force the issue, not just the first half of a fight, but the second half of a fight. And maybe from Floyd's standpoint, he turns around and says, you know what, this kid is going to be even hungrier because he wants to knock me off of that Mount Rushmore, which has one face, his, and maybe these are the things I need to do. Maybe not engage as much, maybe not move around as much, maybe just utilize that jab, because the jab, basically, that defense is your best offense. Everything starts with that jab, and Floyd's a great jab puncher. He's a good counter puncher. So I certainly think it would be entertaining if these two fought again.
Well, I will say this. If Floyd fights him again, which I think we all think should happen, you're going to get a fight where Floyd's going to have to fight him in the middle of the ring, because when he fought him in the middle of the ring, it was Floyd. He was very effective. When he got on the ropes, that's where, you're fighting against a sheer power puncher, a guy that can hit you with both hands and do some damage. And I think Floyd started to feel the effects of that early in the fight, and then tried to move the fight into the middle of the ring towards the later round. So do the fans want to see this again? Absolutely, because I think the fans feel like, again, this was the toughest fight Floyd had in several years. I definitely think to Floyd Mayweather, you and I talked about this on previous shows in the past, it's about making money. And he doesn't want to fight a person that's dangerous, where he could lose everything that he's worked hard to build and also not make any money out of it. So this is a fight now that he has everything going in Mayweather fashion, where he can make a pretty good mint out of it, and also really cement himself as far as a guy now that what next, So obviously there are other fighters that are out there. There's another younger fighter that I've been impressed with. Love the nickname One Time. I love it. Keith One Time Thurman. What do you think about this guy? Is this guy legitimate? Everyone talks about him at 147 dominating. Is he a guy that, let's face it, I'm gonna say something that may get under some people's skin here, Q. He's not a guy that looks the part. What I'm saying is, rough, long hair, blah, blah, blah. And you look at a guy like Floyd Mayweather, hence Pretty Boy. You look at the Sugar Ray Leonards of the world. You look at a lot of the great champions, especially middleweight champions, and they may have a look, Oscar De La Hoya. Does this guy fit the part of what boxing may want going forward?
I'm going to give you a name, and then I'm going to tell you it's going to go right back to Thurman. Amir Khan had a very impressive win over Collazo, and I think a lot of people thought that, Collazo coming off a big win, and maybe they misjudged that a little bit. Now, Khan was the guy that really wanted to entice Mayweather into basically giving him a shot in September, that September 4th Las Vegas shot. The problem is Amir Khan's going to be out of action because it's kept clear really for fasting, Ramadan. So a planned fight fell through.
Right.
So now again, that's why you might see Maidana. However, the issue is when you look at a guy like Keith Thurman, who absolutely destroyed Julio Diaz, and Diaz is an experienced fighter. If you look at the rankings, at the end of last year, Ring Magazine had Thurman ranked 7th. Now, if Mayweather and Maidana do fight in September, then I think there's a possibility that after that fight, it could be Thurman stepping in. Now, here's another thing, though. Because if you look at Mayweather, who's held several belts, he does not like the interim belts. He believes they should be abolished as part of an effort to clean up boxing, and that's due to his title shot by rule. So you look at some of these interim belts that these guys have fought, you don't really have to worry about that. When you look at Thurman, the problem is Mayweather could inherit Thurman as his WBA mandatory challenger at 147 because Thurman has been the WBA's #1 ranked welterweight since 2013. So by the time Mayweather and Maidana fight again, the winner could be obligated to fight Thurman. Basically, what I'm trying to say is Thurman might get one more shot, one more fight, and then be the next guy in line. And I think he's a very good fighter. I really do. I think, a lot of people, for some reaon, he's underrated to me. I think people don't give this kid a lot of respect.
Oh, no. He has everything. I mean, this guy's got knockout power in both hands. He's got movement around. I mean, he's got charisma, showmanship. I think he's a Floyd Mayweather type of talent. I really do, if he's given an opportunity. I just don't want him to fall, in obscurity where, we could be looking at, and it's kind of funny because they're kind of coming from the same area. He's in Clearwater. Look at, Winky Wright. You remember him out of Tampa. And for the longest time, this guy went under the radar, was knocking guys out, giving people great fights.
Fought everyone.
And no one wanted to fight him. It was the big boys until later in his career. I just hope that this kid at 25 right now doesn't hit that wall where we're not going to hear from him until he's 30 years old.